Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 1 Looking at the mystery by Samael Aun Weor Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 2 Chapter 1 Death 1 Many years ago, when my father died, we were veiling him, together with other people. These people were with me when I fell asleep for a moment, and I suddenly saw that my father had entered in the room, where we were veiling him, had his hands in the pockets of his pants, and asked me who had died, who was that one that was lying down, and I thought, it was my father that had just died and he was speaking to me. Can you tell me the cause of this phenomenon? It is essential to understand that people never in life worry about waking up consciousness. Everybody in the social conglomerate have a deeply sleeping consciousness. It is obvious that after death the intellectual animal mistakenly called man continues with his illusory life. If any discarnate person were told that he is dead, he obviously would not believe it. It is obvious that the discarnate always believe they are alive, because when they die they find nothing strange. They always see the same sun, the same clouds, and the same birds trying to fly from the dense sallow of the garden. The so-called dead, after their great step, stroll by the streets of the city or the different sectors of the district where they died. Normally they continue with their daily work, and they sit at the table in their house, and even they have the luxury of going to bed in their own bed. They would never think that they have passed on. They feel they are living in the here and now. In these conditions, upon seeing their body in the coffin, they suppose that it is somebody else's. Not even remotely they suspect that it is their own dead body. That is the crude reality of the facts. For that reason do not be surprised at having had that intimate experience. 2. What was the cause of the fear that my younger sister felt when entering the room, where my grandfather was being veiled? Said fear has ancestral roots. In general it is transmitted from parents to children. There is not anyone in life that has not felt it, the same as when we go into a dark cavern, or when we are in the presence of a real ghost. The causa causarum of all this rests in the subjective psyche, better we say in the sleeping consciousness. When one awakens the consciousness, it is very clear that such fears disappear radically. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 3. Why can the children see a discarnate presence and the adults cannot? My youngest son saw my father newly discarnate and chatted with him. We, on behalf of the truth, should be clear and emphasize certain ideas. It is not too much to say that all children are clairvoyants. We have been told that before closing the fontanelle of the newly born, that is the crown of the head, human creatures have the power of seeing the supersensible, that does not belong to the physical world, that is invisible for the adults. If the human beings were to recover the innocence of mind and of heart, it is unquestionable that they would recover the divine clairvoyance, the power of seeing the hidden, the mysterious, the strange. 4. When we die, we have the danger of getting lost? Or does somebody wait for us? What is it, that of getting lost, distinguishing lady? What is it, that of getting lost, gentlemen? When are you going to stop being afraid? Do you get lost maybe in your house? I have already spoken much and clearly about this. I have already said that during the first days we continue living in the same house where we died, and that there are many testimonies of these facts. Upon dying we meet those dear deceased, that have died before us, that is, our relative and friends. 5. Can we recognize those relative and friends, that we meet when we discarnate? Could you recognize your dead mother, your father, your friends and relatives? Do you suppose that one could simply just not recognize one's dear beings? Your question is quite strange. It is obvious that no son could ignore the author of his days. It is clear that all have the capacity to recognize what we have known. 6. When we die, do we suffer loneliness? Each one is different. The selfish person, that one that is self-contained, the misanthropic, the one who doesn't love anybody, is obvious that here he will have to endure the bitterness of solitude. After death his painful solitary state in the region of the dead is pathetic, clear and defined. 7. In accordance with what they call destiny, is it true that our days and hours are already fixed, counted? Distinguishing gentlemen, with great pleasure I will answer your question. When you leave for a trip it is unquestionable that you take a certain amount of money for the looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor for diverse systems of transport. Obviously you should know how to spend your money, because if you waste it your trip will have to be interrupted. I want you to understand that upon us coming into the world the angels of destiny deposit certain capital of vital values in our three brains. It is clear that if we waste it, if we put an end to this fortune, the trip by the path of existence will be interrupted quickly, but if we save them, our trip will be made long, and so we will reach old age. 8. You surprise me with your talk of the three brains, and I have always heard that we have one brain. Could you tell me, which are those other two? So you are surprised by the three brains. Understand me, inside the cranial box we have the intellectual brain, in the superior part of the dorsal spine we have the motor brain, the capital center of the movements, in the solar plexus and other sympathetic centers is the brain of emotions. Have you understood me now? 9. Why do we feel fear upon thinking of death, and why do we become attached to life? The desire to live is very powerful. All human beings want to live, and are attached to sensual life. It is obvious that the adhesion and addiction to, and the desire of material existence, has us fascinated. In these conditions in no way we want to die, we are afraid of death, we don't want to cease existing. If the people, through the developing of understanding, lose the desire of material life, then the fear of death would disappear. One comes to lose such fear when one understands the illusory reality of our existence, when one sees that nothing here is permanent. Ideas pass away, as do things and people. 10. When a person discarnates, what does the soul do? Where does it go in order to embody again? It is necessary to speak clearly and to understand. People have the mind too full of dogma, intellectual deterioration exists. Now people are not able to open up to the new, of seeing the natural, they always think of the artificial, and they consider this as the pattern of all. In other times the human senses had not yet degenerated. In the ancient times of our world, people could see the dead, hear and feel them, etc. In Lemuria, for example, when somebody proceeded to discarnate, she dug her own grave, and went into it with a head toward the east. Happily she said goodbye to their relatives and these smiled cheerfully. Who passed on to the beyond didn't remain invisible for their relatives, she could continue living together delightfully with her own. The air seemed transparent, in the atmosphere one could see clearly the spirits, the souls, the innocent creatures of nature. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 5. But we know that in the atmosphere, under those zones that belong to the three-dimensional, to the physical, metaphysical regions exist, by way of worlds or spaces, where the souls of the dead live, before taking new body again. 11. Why is it that whenever I dream of my deceased relatives, I chat with them and they affirm to me that they have not died, and that are they in perfect state of health? Distinguishing gentleman, I like your question and with the greatest pleasure I will answer you. Above all I want you to understand what is the process of the dream. It is unquestionable that the dream is a tiny death, as the vulgar statement says. During the hours in which our body lies sleeping in bed, the soul wanders outside it, goes to different places, and contacts those that have died, and even experiences the treat of chatting with them. It is clear that the dead never believe that they are dead, because in their life they never worried about waking up consciousness. They always believe that they are alive. Now you will understand why the souls of the dear dead make such asseverations to you. 12. Why do spiritualists have special predilection for calling or invoking the deceased? Well, so they learned it from their teachers, Alan Kardec, Leon Denis, and many others. The problem is that such authors didn't thoroughly investigate the essence of this question. Above all I want, my honorable gentlemen, that you know that all the human beings have inside an ego, the itself. Please don't think that such I is the best. You study the Book of the Dead of the old Egyptians and you will understand what I am saying to you. Have you read the Faust of Goethe? If you knew what Mephistopheles really is, you would agree with me. It is unquestionable that the dark character of Mephistopheles is the ego, the I, the myself. who enters the body of the spiritualistic medium is the I of the deceased, Ahriman, Mephistopheles. It is indubitable that such I personifies all our physiological defects, all our errors. The being of the deceased never comes to these sessions of spirits. You distinguish between the being and the I. Who goes to such sessions is Satan, the I want you to understand what is the law of action and consequence, the people that lend their body, their material being to the egos of the dead, to Mephistopheles, to Satan, in their future lives will have to suffer much because of epilepsy. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 6:13 would you be able to say what is the being? The being is the being and the reason of the being is the same being, the being is the divine, the immortal spark of all human being, without principle nor end, terrifyingly divine. Yet the human beings don't possess that spark inside their bodies, but if we sanctified us and we eliminated the I, the Mephistopheles, it is clear that one day the spark will enter in our bodies. Now I invite it to you, to understand what is the being. 14 After death, does one remember the whole life that has just passed? You know, young lady, that after having abandoned the physical body all deceased relive in retrospective form the life that has just passed. The discarnate will begin reviving those instants that preceded their death. For this reason during the first days, as we already said, they will live amongst their people, in their house, in their village, in their town, in their office, in their work. Later, continuing, they will live in all those very previous places. In each facet of their past existence they will repeat the same dramas, the same words, the same scenes, etc. The last retrospective part corresponds to the processes of childhood. Finished the retrospection we have to present ourselves before the tribunals of the divine justice. The angels of the law will judge us for our acts, for our works. 3 roads open up in before the discarnate. First, some vacations in the luminous regions of the infinite space before taking body again. Second, return to a new womb immediately or after some time. Third, entering the hell worlds inside the interior of the planet in which we lived. 15. Is it possible that the retrospection can be made while the person is living? Many people that have been about to die drowned, have seen their life passing in retrospective form. The same thing has happened to people that have been near death for other reasons. 16. A certain day, conducting business associated with matters of graves and crypts in order to bury some relatives, chatting with the administrator of the cemetery, I suddenly went quiet and wide-eyed during a good while. He continued speaking, and upon seeing that I didn't pay attention, he asked me if something was wrong. After speaking to me in a strong manner, I woke up from my abstraction and I related to him what had happened to me. When I stopped speaking I began to feel the presence of somebody, and upon turning saw next to me my mother-in-law, newly discarnate, for whom I was fixing the matters of the cemetery. Later on she smiled kindly, and invited me to pass, making a gesture. As I could not move she just said goodbye, and disappeared from my view. Upon finishing my story, the man had his hair standing up and the goosebumps, and nervously told me, looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 7, that in all the years that he was working in the vault he had never had a sensation like that. Could you tell me what was the cause of this phenomenon? With the greatest pleasure I will answer your question, distinguishing gentleman. In no way you should be surprised because of a supersensible vision. In the times of Lemuria, as I have already said, the dead were visible in the atmosphere for everybody. What pity that now people are surprised with this type of visions. It is not at all rare that those that have died can be made visible from time to time in the atmosphere, and that is evident to you. It obvious that you could verify this by direct perception. The administrator of the vault didn't get so far, but yes, he could have had certain psychic sensibility, enough so that his hair stood up and got the goosebumps. 17. Whenever I dream about my maternal grandmother and I see her sad, she points out something to me, that when I awaken I don't remember, but I have realized through the years that 8 days after these dreams, someone of my family would get on a state of grave illness. Could you say to what is this due? Distinguishing young lady, I have already said in many in my conferences that, during the hours of the normal ordinary dream, the souls of the live escape from the body that sleeps in the bed, and they then contact the souls of the dead. That you see your grandmother, that is normal in the unknown dimension. She visits in instants of anguish, or when any person of your family is getting ill. You already see how the dead are so near to us. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 8 Chapter 2 The Goblins 1 In a spot of the central Colombian mountain range, there was an empty cattle ranch, that was once entered by 2 workers accompanied by 4 big dogs. As the hours of the night drew closer, one of them went out to bring water, but upon leaving the house he started to scream. Upon hearing him his companion said not to do this because it was dangerous, since in that same mountain range lived Patasala, who could respond to the noise and come toward them. The man did not pay any attention and went toward the water always screaming. When he had picked up the water, already returning to the house, he stopped again and began to scream. They then answered him from the high parts of the mountain ranges. The companion had to tell him again to stop screaming, because he had already seen the result, since Patasala had answered him in the high parts of the mountain ranges. The man did not pay any attention, and continued screaming, and Patasala continued answering him, approaching more and more toward where they were. Upon seeing that the Patasala was approaching, the 2 men took refuge inside the house and closed the doors tightly. In a little while the Patasala arrived at the house, and then the 4 mastiffs that accompanied them had to face a true battle with the Patasala. The men were shut up, and could only suffer, and there is not doubt that their defense was the dogs, that after long hours of fight put the Patasala in flight, who upon retiring continued shouting a similar cry. The men, upon understanding that it had gone away, left the house and went away quickly without returning there. Could you give me an explanation of this story, Master? The ordinary people live here of 3 dimension, ignoring the existence of a 4th coordinate, of a 4th dimension. It is necessary to know that beyond our 3-dimensional world, is the unknown dimension, the Etheric Region. If we carefully observed the color of the distant mountains, we could see an intense blue, quite beautiful. It is obvious that the said color is the ether of the 4th dimension. We have been told that in a remote future the whole ether will be visible in full form in the same air that we breathe. The modern scientists deny emphatically the ether, and say that it only exists in the magnetic fields. The people of the Middle Ages denied the roundness of the earth, supposing that this was plane. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 9, when Galileo affirmed that the earth was round and that it was not still, he was about to be condemned to death. When demanded to swear that it was not round and that it didn't move, putting the hands on the Holy Bible, he said, "I swear it, but it moves, it moves?" So, although we deny the existence of the ether, although we swear that it does not exist, we will have to say parodying Galileo, but it exists, it exists. In that etheric region, in that 4th dimension, live the elemental creatures of nature, and this is something that we should understand deeply. To such creatures we will give the name of elementals, in fact, because they live in the elements. You know, my dear friend, that the fire is inhabited by elementals creatures. You understand that the air is also densely inhabited by that class of creatures, and that the water and the earth are inhabited by those same elementals. The creatures of the fire, from the oldest times, were known by the name of salamanders. The elementals of the air are designated with the name of sylphs. The beings of the water are called undines, nereids, sirens, etc., etc. Creatures that live between the rocks of the earth have been baptized with the name of pygmies, gnomes, etc. It is clear that the form of these creatures varies very much. The creatures of the fire are thin and dry, very similar to the cricket, although of much bigger size. The creatures of the air seem small, very beautiful children with rosy faces like the dawn. The elementals of the water have diverse forms. Some seem to be ineffable ladies, happy between the waves of the immense sea. Others have the form of siren fish, with the head of a woman. And lastly there are undines, that play with the clouds or live in the lakes and rivers, that flow along their rocky channels. The gnomes of the earth, the pygmies, appear to be old men with their long white beards and ceremonious continent. They live normally in the mines of the earth or look after the treasures that are hidden somewhere in the earth. All these elementals of the nature are useful in the great creation. Some encourage the fire, others impel the air forming the winds, still others encourages the waters, and others work in the alchemy of the metals inside the bowel of the earth. Many other creatures exist that populate the forests, the deserts, the mountains. You distinguishing gentlemen have talked to us about the Patasala, an elemental very particular of snowy regions in their country. It is obvious that there is a series of elemental creatures with much force and power. The event narrated by you indicates us clearly that the said elemental type has enough power, in order to make his mark in the world of the three-dimension. In the physical world, in the mentioned story it is unquestionable, that there was fight between the dogs and the unknown being. I could assure you in emphatic form, that if it had not been for the dogs, the two mentioned above would have been dead men. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 10 really, in the deep breast of the nature, in the most distant places, in the mystery of the forests, exist goblins, fairies, creatures that the people of the city do not remotely suspect. Not a long time ago, on the whole world ran the news of one strange death. Certain explorer of the Antarctic was found with his throat cut under his tent in that continent of the South Pole. The interesting aspect of this were the words found in his binnacle of this trip. Here one could read sentences like the following. It is coming already, I can already see the monster approach, he is here, oh, my God! What class of monster would it be that? Any guardian of the fourth dimension, that is obvious. Developing clairvoyance we will verify the reality of the fourth dimension, and of the elemental creatures that live in it. 2. By the way of goblins, Master, I want to relate to you a fact that happened 20 years ago in a town called Genova Caldas, Colombia. A girl was sent by their parents in the morning to a store. Upon returning to their home she found en route a woman that had certain resemblance to her mother, who invited the girl to follow her. She did so, leaving the town. Upon arriving the hours of the night and seeing their parents, that the girl didn't return, they put her disappearance in the knowledge of the authorities. Hours later a group was organized that went in search of the mentioned girl. They went to a place where somebody had informed them she had been seen passing, and upon approaching the Ancestral mountain range, a person indicated to them that somewhere around she had passed, and that she had asked the girl where she was going, answering the girl that she went with her mom. They continued the search along the mountain range, and after 3 days found the girl seated half naked on an old trunk of a tree, without being able to speak. Upon bringing her back to the town she recovered her speech, and explained that she had been led by a person identical to her mother to that place, where later she had abandoned her. Do you want to explain to me what is the cause of this, and if it indeed was a goblin, like the people of that place assured us? With the greatest pleasure I will answer your question. Obviously the girl was abducted by a goblin, that took the same form as her mother. The skeptical people of the cities don't believe in these things, but the simple people of the forests give live testimonies of the reality of the goblins, which in the bottom are not more than simple elementals of nature, inhabitants of the fourth dimension, of the fourth coordinate, of the fourth vertical. We Gnostics have means and scientific procedures, in order to enter in that fourth dimension at will, consciously, positively. So we could meet with such creatures of nature and chat with them. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 11:3 would you explain to me, in what way is it possible to penetrate in body and flesh inside the fourth dimension? I would like to see those goblins, those elementals, and if you have the procedure, teach it to me. But, my friend, you are requesting from me something sensational. I want you to know that we Gnostics don't like selfishness. I have the key and the procedures, and with the greatest pleasure I am going to teach one. Above all you should know that nature is not something unconscious, like many suppose. Nature is really Mother Nature. She has formidable psychic powers, which we could use in order to penetrate voluntarily, consciously, positively, in the fourth dimension. You should go to bed on the side of the heart with your head on the palm of the left hand, concentrate intensely on Mother Nature, beg it, request it, beseech it with sentences from the heart, with simple words, that she transports you, that she takes you along the fourth dimension to any forest, to any nearby place, and when you begin to feel your legs and arms in a state of lassitude, when you begin to doze, feeling in state of drowsiness, full of intense faith, get up from your bed, saying, "Mother of mine, on behalf of the Christ I request you, that you take me with my body to such place." State now the place, where you want to go. I advise you, my good friend, that before going out into the street, you give first a jump with the intention of floating into the surrounding atmosphere, in order to verify, if you really are in the fourth dimension. It is evident, of course, that if you don't float, if you are not able to remain suspended in the atmosphere, it is because you have not yet penetrated the world of the fourth dimension. In this last case, go back to bed and repeat the experiment. Some people succeed immediately, others take months and whole years in this apprenticeship. It is urgent to know that each human being has his particular nature mother, that intelligent principle, that created his own physical body, that united zoosperm and ovum for fecundation, that gave form to each organic cell. Our particular Divine Mother can help us provided that we behave in an upright manner. You work with this technique, and when you achieve success, you will live together in the world of the fourth dimension with all the elemental creatures of nature. 4. In a thick forest of the Department of Huila, in the Republic of Colombia, it happened to a farm worker that, being between vigil and the dream state, he felt noises near his house in the hours of the night and heard a voice that said, "Light up the candle, light up the candle, light up the candle." The man didn't pay any attention, but when he was looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 12 starting to fall asleep, he heard again that they repeated the same words 3 times. In view of this, he got up and lit up the candle, sitting down next to it. When the night had already advanced, the man fell asleep again, hearing again the same voice that repeated, "Light up the candle, light up the candle, light up the candle." He woke up and saw that the candle was being turned off. He revived it again with firewood, and, while he was doing this, he remembered at that moment a dream that he had 7 years ago while living in another region, where he saw that he was alone in a forest and that a wild animal attacked him. Could you explain to me who gave those orders, and what did his dream of 7 years back have to do with what was happening in those moments? Distinguishing gentleman, I am pleased to answer your question. Your story is interesting. The gentleman of such an adventure, he dreamt 7 years before the mentioned event, and it is clear that his dream was totally fulfilled. There is not doubt that his dream was prophetic, that it became reality. Without doubt, discarnate people, that is, souls of dead people, that at other times lived in such forests, as shepherds of porcine animals, helped the mentioned gentleman. They saw the danger that watched over him. There is not doubt that in such forests there are ferocious beasts, tigers, panthers, wild beasts of all species, etc., etc. The deceased pointed out to him the necessity of lighting the fire in order to avoid the danger, to defend himself from those night assaults, possibly of tigers, speaking specifically. Do you see how we have invisible friends, that look after us and help us? 5-2 years ago, in a meeting in which unusual cases were recounted, one of the people attending the meeting, who worked in a company of electric articles, told us that in Scotland there were many goblins, and that he, in particular, was bewildered by the following case. An intimate friend of him told him that he had become friends with a goblin and that they chatted for long hours, saying further that the goblin liked to eat certain sweet and sour cherries that were in some very scarce places of the forest. Since he was not believed, he planned to make a physical demonstration, for which he proposed the goblin to take it to the place where there were the cherries that he liked so much. But since they could not walk together, he asked the goblin to get into a cloth bag in order to transport it. Once the goblin was inside the bag, the Scot ran to the house of his friend screaming, in order to demonstrate that he was friend of a goblin, and that he was inside the cloth bag. But big was their surprise upon opening it and see that this was empty. He left the house forlorn and embarrassed, walking towards the place where were the sweet and sour cherries so much liked by the goblin. On the way he realized that something moved inside the cloth bag that he was still holding in his hand. Upon arriving to the place where were the cherries, a bunny jumped out of the bag and started to devour the cherries, transforming later into the goblin. Upon seeing him, the Scot recriminated him, saying, "Why did you play that dirty trick on me? Don't you see that I am in ridicule with my friends because of your action?" The goblin, looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 13, answered that he didn't consent to that class of demonstrations, and that if you wanted to continue being a good friend of his, you should promise not to use him again, in order to convince his friends of the friendship that united them. Is it possible that the goblins can disappear and appear changing form? With the greatest pleasure I will answer your question. We have been told that such goblins assume very handsome masculine forms with blonde hair and pink complexion. Some affirm that they fall in love with the young women in the forests, and that they are accustomed to give them delicious serenades. Old traditions affirm that only with a competition of orchestras, making resonate delicious music, they could be moved away. Their story is very interesting. You already see how somebody could become a friend of a goblin. Unfortunately, such person made the error of wanting to make demonstrations with their invisible friend. It is obvious that the goblins are enemies of exhibitionism. When they offer their friendship, they do it sincerely. Unfortunately, people have the exhibitionist tendency, and that is very serious. It is not strange that the creature took the form of a bunny, that it devoured the cherries. You should not be amazed at that. They eat different substances, principles and fruits of nature. They are creatures that exist, that have life. They live normally in the fourth dimension, but in some solitary places of the forests, they could be made visible and tangible in the flesh for the ordinary person, when they so want it. The vain people of the world no longer accept this, because they are too sunk in barbarism. They have degenerated their psychic senses, and have become too materialistic. We Gnostics think in a different way. We have exercises and systems, in order to develop our psychic powers, and, by means of certain procedures, we can give ourselves the luxury of getting in contact not only with the goblins, but also with the devas and elementals of this great creation. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 14 Chapter 3, which is one in a country estate, where Spaniards lived at the time of the conquest, noises were heard constantly at midnight, and a man on a horse was heard to arrive, who dismounted and entered the house, to open the doors of the rooms, until one day the administrator decided to go and see what was that produced those noises. Upon coming outside, he saw in the courtyard a man on horseback, to whom he said, "On behalf of God Almighty, tell me, what do you want?" The man answered, "Come with me." The administrator followed him up to a creek near the estate, where the horseman stopped and said, "In this place there is a buried treasure, that I beg you to dig up." The administrator got it out, and instantly the noises in the country estate ceased. Could you tell me something about this story? There is not doubt that this unusual and strange case has solid foundations. When talking about life itself, we should emphasize certain transcendental ideas. The existence of the superior dimensions of space is well known. It clearly stands out with meridian clarity that the souls of the dead live in the unknown dimension. The materialization of a metaphysical entity is clear and apparent. It is evident that the discarnate, the deceased that riding an energetic steed spoke so to the surprised man, had left buried a valuable treasure. The remorse, the addiction to the vile metal, etc., etc., are more than enough reasons in order to achieve the unusual appearance. The concrete fact of so apparent a materialization of the psychic type is interesting. We should affirm in severe tone that the deceased abandoned the unknown dimension in order to penetrate the physical world, where he became visible and tangible. It is comprehensible that upon such treasure being discovered, the strange metaphysical noises stopped. Cases like these are plentiful everywhere. Here in Mexico, the Platedos co-religionists of Pancho Villa left fabulous hidden treasures, and I even know about a place where psychic extraordinary phenomenon have happened. This happens in all the parts of the world. 2-1 Holy Thursday, upon going by the lagoon of Montchever, some people saw a beautiful woman of golden hair so long that it covered her body, taking a bath amid the lagoon. After a while of being observing her, it was big their surprise upon seeing that the woman disappeared amid the waters. Could you say what class of woman this could be? Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 15 with the greatest pleasure I will give the gentleman an answer to his question. We have already spoken clearly about the elementals of the fire, of the air, of the waters and of the earth. It is not strange in any way that one of those elementals with the appearance of a woman of singular beauty became visible before the people in the crystalline waters of the lake. Those Undines construct their palaces in the bottom of the waters, and it is obvious that they glow burning in the mysterious landscape. At some time myself also had a similar experience navigating in the Atlantic Ocean. When the sun began to rise amongst the deep waters, because so it seemed, I saw two extraordinary Nereids that, walking among the waters, came in the opposite direction to our small ship. The one had violet color, not only in her head and in her eyes, but also in her tunic and sandals. The other had rather the color of coral, and their continent was majestic and sublime. That pair of beauties said something to me, and then they stopped on the cliffs, contemplating me deeply. I don't deny being able to establish a friendship with those Nereids of the immense sea. They make their homes out of etheric matter in the abysmal bottom of the gusty ocean, and it is even said that when they fall in love with a man, they take their soul, in order to live together with him in their oceanic habitation. 3. Here in Mexico, during the time of the Inquisition happened an unusual case of witchcraft. 2 women were accused before the Inquisition, and when the clergymen and guards entered the house of the women they only saw on a bed 4 legs, because the bodies were absent, simply not there. The clergymen proceeded liturgically with exorcisms and conjurations of all type. Suddenly something strange happened. 2 horrible big birds came into that room before the astonished clergymen, and they then threw themselves into the bed where the legs lay. The clergymen, horrified, were amazed upon seeing that those birds of wrong omen assumed human forms. The legs came to form part of the bodies of those women that, instants before, were only sinister air creatures. The Inquisition proceeded against these witches, and condemned them to die in the fire. Could the Master give me an explanation? The case that you have related is interesting, and it is obvious that you have the answer. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 16, much has been talked about witchcraft, and in the Middle Age many women burned in the fire died accused of such crime. There is not doubt that these are simply black witches that knows how to put their physical body inside the 4th dimension, in order to fly by air, or in order to walk on the waters, or attend their harrowing witches. Sabbath. We have been told that here in Mexico those harrowing creatures are able to leave their physical legs, in order to fly in the air with more comfort. From a rigorous clinical point of view, in the light of the official anatomy, it is obvious that no doctor would accept such an awesome statement. At this moment comes to memory the witches of Topsail and the Metamorphosis of Ovid. They relate that Hippolyta became an ass. Have you never heard speak of lycanthropy and the wolf man? The human organism has infinite possibilities that the men of science do not remotely suspect. When a physical body submerges inside the 4th dimension it could assume any shape and even abandon part of its members. It is unquestionable that the scientists of this time, if they were to listen to our discourse, they would indignant rip their vestments thundering and lightning and pronouncing terrible words against us, the siblings of the Gnostic movement. The official science is not the whole science. The day will arrive, in which the sages could verify the reality of the 4th coordinate and all their infinite possibilities of metaphysical type. That the witches could abandon their legs, or transform themselves into beasts, it is not a new case. Already Nes, the Trojan, found in the Estrophases Islands those big birds headed by the loathsome Selene, that so much damage caused to him. Those that make fun of our words should study the need of Virgil, the poet of Mantua. In no way we praise those sinister creatures of darkness. It is obvious that a horrible future awaits them in the hellish worlds. Those who have studied the Divine Comedy of the Dante will find the witches of the witches, Sabbath in hell, torturing with their horrendous claws the human plants. Cruel harpies that hating God and the Divine Mother are hurled along, loathsome, in the black cliff. 4. Teacher, as you have written much in your books about the 4th dimension, several people tell me that they don't believe that it exists, because they want to see it. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 17 palpably, as I have not known how to give the appropriate answer, I would like you to explain to me, in what form I could give such an answer. By God and Holy Mary. This is not questioning of beliefs, we are talking about scientific matters. Beliefs are for religious matters, but science is something different. Please pay attention. The fourth dimension is the time, and anyone who wants to know something about this fourth coordinate should study the theory of relativity of Einstein. I see you sitting at a table, writing. If you observe this piece of furniture you will see that it has 3 dimensions, length, width and height. Furthermore, there exists a fourth vertical and this is the time. How long ago did the carpenter build this table? Everybody perceives the fourth dimension, because there is no person that doesn't have a certain number of years. There will be people that are newly born, other that are 20 years old and many old men that await only death. Time in itself has 2 aspects, the chronometrical, that is only superficial, and the spatial, that is the fundamental one. Think, I am not talking about your beliefs, we are dealing with matters merely scientific. It is necessary to have a little bit of maturity in order to understand. The conquest of the external space, the cosmic trips, will be impossible, while we have not been able to conquer time, that is to say, the fourth coordinate. If a cosmic ship could leave from our world at the speed of the light 300,000 kilometers per second, and if after several hours of cosmic trip it were to return to the Earth conserving the same speed, you can be absolutely sure that the crew of such ship would not find the world that they left, but a future world, and Earth advanced in many thousands of years. This already was demonstrated by Einstein with his mathematical calculations. The day in which the men of science invent cosmic ships able to pass beyond the speed of the light they will have conquered time, in other words, they will have conquered the fourth dimension. That is everything. The three-dimensional worlds is the result of the speed of light squared. If we pass beyond the speed of the light, we entered into the fourth dimension. The witches of the mentioned story, by means of dark procedures, cross the barrier of the speed of light instantly, and penetrate in the fourth dimension. But, this is not something advisable. There exist sacred virtuous procedures, like those of Peter, the apostle of Jesus, or those of the divine Nazarene, by means of which we could enter into the fourth dimension. 5. At a reunion a story was told, that the grandmothers of several of the present used to relate the following anecdote about witches. In the times of the Mexican Revolution some people found several pair of legs among the ashes of an oven or of the big braziers, that looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 18 were used in the large houses of that time. Afraid of such discovery, they waited in order to see what was happening, and were surprised that some time later the witches returned in their brooms, without their legs, and that they put them back by means of the art of magic. They celebrated their strange ritual, and then were gone to their houses like any normal people. These stories circulated by word of mouth between the neighbors of the region, causing astonishment. Would you be so kind to tell us whether these events were true? Distinguishing gentlemen, we have already spoken quite clearly about this and we could assert that such things are true. This type of tenebrous people, here in Mexico, abandon their legs, when they enter the fourth dimension. 6. Only here in Mexico? Yes, those of us who we have explored the different metaphysical lands we know that this act, abandoning the legs, happens only in our homeland. We have explored different countries and places and the investigation has taken us very far. Permit me inform you that in Salamanca, Spain, the castle of Clinxer exists, inside which the workshop of witchcraft functions. The harrowing witches, affiliated to the Hole of Darkness, attend their meetings and they don't leave their legs in their beds, neither at the foot of the chimney, neither elsewhere. The class of people is becoming more and more perverse, and they are finally thrown in the dark abyss, where one can only hear the cries and the gnashing of teeth. 7. In a certain place that I used to know in South America, being on my bed face up, I felt noises in the part of the room where I was. I perceived an unpleasant scent that penetrated below the door, and minutes I later felt that a person sat on my chest paralyzing my whole body. I was not able to speak, neither to make any muscular movement. After a few minutes I remembered that I could save myself making a conjuration, but since I could not speak, the only thing I could make, mentally, was the sign of the star of 5 points and the entity retired. Could you do me the favor of clarifying what class of entity was this, Master? I will answer the distinguished gentleman's question. We know by direct experience that those abominable creatures of the witches' Sabbath are accustomed to throw themselves on the bodies of their victims, in order to bite them in the body, forming horrible stains in their skin, or in order to take out of the dense form the soul, and take it to any place of the world, or in order to torment them in any way. In these cases, we have advised to pray with great vehemence, recite the conjuration of the 7 of Solomon, or the conjuration of the 4. This type of prayers is of extraordinary efficacy for the looking at the mystery Samael and Weor 19 mental and physical defense. With these conjurations the harrowing harpies flee, leaving us in peace. Conjuration of the 4 caput mortuum, imperit tibi dominus per vivum et devotum serpendum. Cherub, imperit tibi dominus per adam jachava. Aquila erans, imperit tibi dominus per elastori. Serpens, imperit tibi dominus tetragrammaton, per indulum et leonum. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, M. Fluadator per spiritum Elohim. Mene in terror per adam jachava. Fiat firmamentum per Jehovah Sabaoth. Fiat judicium per inum in virtute Michael. Angel of the blind eyes, obey, or pass away with this holy water. Work, winged bull, or revert to the earth, unless thou wilt that I should pierce thee with this sword. Chain eagle, obey my sign, or fly by this breathing. Writhing serpent, crawl at my feet, or be tortured by the sacred fire and give way, before the perfumes, that I burn in it. Water, return to water. Fire, burn. Air, circulate. Earth, revert to earth. By virtue of the pentagram, which is the morning star, and by the name of the tetragram, which is written in the center of the cross of light. Amen. 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 Conjuration of the 7 in the name of Michael, may Jehovah command thee and drive thee hence, Chavajoth. In the name of Gabriel, may Adonai command thee, and drive thee hence, Baal. In the name of Raphael, begone before Eliel, Samgabiel. By Samael Sabaoth, and in the name of Elohim Gibber, get thee hence, and Dramelech. By Zachariah let Salmelech, be obedient unto Elva, Sana Gabriel. By the divine and human name of Shaddai, and by the sign of the pentagram, which I hold in my right hand, in the name of the angel Enel, by the power of Adam and Eve, who are Joshua, begone Lilith. Let us rest in peace Nahima. By the holy Elohim and by the names of the genii Kashiel, Shaltiel, Aphiel and Zerhiel, at the command of Raphael, depart from us Moloch. We deny thee our children to devour. Amen. 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 Looking at the mystery Samael and Weor 20 Chapter 4 Psychic Narrations. My friends, it is urgent to learn how to travel in the 4th dimension. Many will find such learning difficult, but it is not really so intricate. What are needed is willpower, indefatigable tenacity and infinite patience. There comes to my memory at this instant some very important episodes related to the jinn state. When I began my learning, I certainly had to suffer a little. I was peacefully in bed with my head resting on my left palm. I concentrated in my Mother Nature and in the Christ, asking with all my heart to be taken in my physical body to remote places on earth. When I already was in a certain state of lassitude, when I was beginning to feel drowsy, I softly left my bed, and went out into the yard of the house. There I gave long jumps with the intention of floating into space. Many times it was raining and then I had to endure the water and the cold, dressed in my night clothes, and when I saw that I was not floating, I returned to bed to repeat this experiment over and over again unceasingly during the night. My sleeplessness was immense, my body was losing weight, my face was pallid and my eyes surrounded by dark shadows, but I was stubborn and one day I was successful. In a state of drowsiness I got up from my bed and huge was my astonishment, upon finding 3 ladies inside my chamber. One of them helped me get out of bed, while the other 2 sitting at a table drew lots with some cards, to see which of them would take charge of my insignificant person. It was clear that the luck fell on the one who lifted me from my bed. She helped me leave the room, and led me along a corridor that led to the street, opened the hall door of the house and took me out to the street. I then saw many other people that were also engaged in the same kind of work in that town, where they lived at the present moment. The lady told me that I could float in the atmosphere, and upon doing this I felt a great happiness. I will admit that there was a certain lack of wisdom in my acts, because I, full of happiness, embarked upon the clouds, or threw myself towards the earth in order to fly over the houses, the towers of the churches, etc., etc. 1 and nobody saw you? R-O. Distinguishing lady, I say to you that nobody saw me, because my body had entered the fourth dimension. I had escaped from the world of 3 dimensions, and for that reason it had become invisible for the people of this world. The lady led me to New York. There was a gentleman that was also working in the same way. That woman helped him also and took him out from his apartment, so that there were already 2 travelers of the 4th dimension. We crossed the Atlantic Ocean and we then flew on to Europe, going by different cities and ruins, because we were in the looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 21 Second World War. That man told me, I don't know what I see in you, but the only thing I know is that inside you there is much philosophy and occultism. The gentleman warned me of the dangers that existed in the lands from Europe. He told me that we have to have much care, because if we came to leave the 4th vertical, we would fall in those countries without documentation of any kind, for which they would kill us or put us in jail. You are right. I answered, in no way we should abandon the 4th coordinate. During the trip we stopped for a while in order to enter a dressmaker's house. The lady that drove us manifested the desire to help some people that lived there. In the meantime we remained inside a contiguous room, chatting. When we left that house with our guide, we continued floating on the European sky in order to arrive at the place where we wanted to go. Once completed the required investigations, I said goodbye to my guide and to my friend and returned home. You can already see, distinguished friends, how with will and patience one is able to learn how to put the physical body inside the 4th dimension. To me this represented a whole year of bitterness. 2 How did the guide know that in that house that you mentioned help was needed? And what type of help? R with the greatest pleasure I will respond to your question, dear lady. It is clear that the people that lived in such a house were friends of the guide. The help given by the lady that guided us was related to the jinn studies. It had as purpose to help a person to enter in the 4th dimension, that is all. 3 How long were you making the trip? R Well, distinguishing lady, I consider that in coming and going it could have lapsed a pair of hours. 4 How did you know how to return on your own? R This question is very interesting and gives an opportunity for a beautiful explanation. It happens that in the world of the 4th dimension everything returns to its original starting point. If we open a door, this closes immediately by itself. If we took an object from one place to another, it returns by itself to its place. For example, in certain occasion I left the house by the 4th dimension. I located myself exactly at a street in the distance and I then took off my nightshirt. I threw it into space, and observed carefully the course that the shirt followed. I then saw with astonishment, that floating in the atmosphere the object returned home, entered by the door and ended up on the bed. Therefore, it is not strange, that I was overtaken by this returning force, to go back in an instinctive and automatic manner to the bedroom until my body was placed in the position in which it was before. 5 In a snowy region from South America, a man that looked after livestock, being tired stopped at a solitary cabin accompanied by his dog. He lit a fire in order to be more comfortable. At midnight he felt strange noises, and heard the dog bark as if an unknown person were approaching. Upon observing what happened, I saw a man covered with hair looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 22 without any clothes. He took his rifle in order to attack the visitor, who said, "My friend, don't attack me, don't hurt me, that I come in peace." Telling him how he had reached that state by making a promise many years before to live far from civilization, and not allow any woman to see him. The cattleman offered him food and a roof in the cabin, and indicated that he lived in a country property, where women Dante lived, that when he wanted he could go over there, in order to chat with him and eat what he wanted. One day, the hairy man visited him in the country property and, while chatting with him, he observed that some ladies from that place were looking at him, fleeing then without ever returning. Could you explain us, Master, why did he make this resolution, to live in the solitude and far from women? With the greatest pleasure I will respond to your question, distinguishing gentleman. I find your story very interesting. Certainly the case of the hairy man is very lamentable. In all of this I see a little ignorance. I find it too absurd, escaping from women, because it would be impossible to achieve liberation, salvation, since they are an important element in life. Love is the foundation of liberation, of salvation, of illumination. Only by loving we can reach God, only by truly loving we can reach the eternal blessedness. We have written many works and it is worthwhile that our readers study them. The Perfect Matrimony, for example, is one of those books that could teach to the people what love is. There are some other important texts, for example, The Mystery of the Golden Blossom, Parsifal Unveiled, and many others. There is not doubt that the hairy man became an authentic savage. In contact with nature he sprouted the skin of an ape man, involuted until he was converted in an ape, that is all. 6. At the time of the colony, 2 gentlemen that rode toward the city in a rainy day, trying to rest and shelter from the rain, they saw a tavern, in which it seemed that there was a party, because those that were there danced, drank and laughed. They entered and also stayed to take part in the party. Upon feeling tired, they retired to their room to sleep. The next day, when they woke up, their surprise was huge, when they saw that in that place there was only old, ancient dust and skeletons spread around the whole house. Frightened, they escaped from their panic-stricken. Could you tell me what was the cause of this phenomenon? Interesting story, distinguishing gentleman. There is here a marvelous phenomenon of the 4th dimension. There is not doubt that those travelers had momentary access to the 4th dimension, in which they could see and hear many discarnate people, deceased say, with which they passed the time in a friendly way. The next day they received a surprise upon discovering in such tavern only the bones of the dead. 7. A Bohemian that was accustomed to live in the taverns, one day upon leaving from a tavern in order to go to his house, felt a strange noise that came behind him. Upon looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 23 back, he saw a human figure without a head that followed him at a certain distance. The man began to run shouting, with which people came out of their houses to help him. Upon arriving near his house, he passed out. Hours later, when he woke up, he related to the people what had happened. Do you want to explain to me, why did he see a man without a head? The gentleman talks to us about a decapitated person. Many people that perished in the guillotine during the French Revolution continued in the beyond, in the unknown dimension in the shape of beheaded human beings. It happens that those that have died that way sometimes are made visible in such a sinister figure in the physical world. My friends, it is good that you know that charmed lands exist, regions of the 1001 Nights, and that all that belongs to the 4th dimension. Nature has marvels and prodigies. I remember that in some of my trips, that I took around lands from America, I arrived at the house of a boy that was very sick. The crows, vultures, etc. stopped on the roof of that house. This was happening before the doctors predicted that the boy would die. What is astonishing is that such birds, that evidently are associated with the ray of Saturn, can guess with so much success and know with absolute accuracy the place where a creature was going to die. We can assert in fact, that this boy died without the medical science having been able to save him. There is not doubt that the type of birds of the sky completes a beautiful mission, cleaning the nature of all decay. It is clear, that they have powers, that allow them to know the place, where somebody is supposed to die. All this invites us to meditate on the powers of nature. We can all get in contact with the elementals and know the marvels and prodigies of nature, if we learn how to travel in the 4th dimension. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 24 Chapter 5 Reincarnation, when the hour of death arrives, the angel entrusted with cutting the thread of existence joins the dying at his deathbed. At the precise instant in which we exhale the final breath, the angel of death takes the soul out of the body and cuts with his reap the silver cord, a certain mysterious thread, silvery, that connects the soul with the physical body. Such magnetic cord could lengthen or shorten until the infinite. A dream is said to be a tiny death. It is known that during a dream the soul is not inside the body, but that it travels to remote distances, and then the silver thread lengthens infinitely. Thanks to such a thread the soul is able to return to the physical body in the moment of awakening after the dream. The moribund are accustomed to see the angel of death with his ghostly, skeletal figure, adorned with a funeral apparel. It is clear that the so sinister figure is only assumed when these angels are working. Outside of their work they assume beautiful figures, maybe of children, maybe of ladies or of venerable old men. The angels of death are never bad or perverse. They always work in accordance with the great law. Each one is born in his hour and dies exactly in his time. The souls of the dead recapitulate, or review the life that has just passed in detailed form. This procedure is always carried out retrospectively. During such a process the souls retake their steps, live in those places where they lived before. They always repeat the same things, the same facts, the same events. When they come to revive the instance of their first childhood they seem like children. It is obvious that once they have reviewed their life as it happened, they come before the master of karma, before the tribunals of the law, ready to be judged. This is what it is called to come before the tribunals of God. From such a judgment, from such a verdict, follows the future of each soul. Some souls get on the celestial regions before returning to this world, others enter in the hellish worlds, located inside the interior of the earth, and others, finally, return either immediately or somewhat later to this valley of tears. This return to this world can be quite painful. Unfortunately, we always have to return. The angels of life connects the silver thread with the zoosperm that is going to be fecundated in a womb. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 25, the creature is in gestation in the womb, but the soul that returns only enters the body at the instant in which the baby makes the first inhalation of air. Understanding this is vital and indispensable. Therefore we, before this life that we have at this moment, had not only one past existence, but many others. Each one is born in accordance with their own destiny. Some are born in rich and very wealthy families, and others return amongst poor people and beggars. If we did well in our past existence, we pick up the prize now. We return to homes where nothing is lacking and we will have comforts of all kinds. If we did wrong, if we wasted money, if we were greedy, if we exploited our fellow men, if we made the error of stealing or of ruining another, if we made the wrong use of money, it is evident that it is our turn to return amongst miserable families, dressed with the bodies of beggars, unhappy, hungry and suffering malnutrition. So each one gets the fruit of their own actions. It is clear that people don't remember their past lives, because they have the consciousness asleep. If people had an awakened consciousness, then it is obvious that they would remember all their previous existences. One should make an effort in doing works of charity, dress the nude, feed the hungry, give a drink to the thirsty, teach the ignorant, etc., 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 so that in their future return to the earth after death, they are born in beautiful homes, between people of good customs, with much abundance, peace and prosperity. 1. Do angels of life and angels of death exist? With the greatest pleasure I will respond to your question. The angels of death are present at the beds of the dying and live normally in the fifth dimension, in the astral world of which we are told by the esotericism and the occultism. The angels of life have bodies of children, they know much of occult medicine, they have power over the waters of existence, over the womb, over the amniotic liquid, over the creative organs, and they live normally in the fourth dimension, in the etheric world. There is not doubt that the angels of life work with the women during childbirth. They could open every womb and help in every birth. They are accustomed to be extraordinary doctors. Really they are those entrusted with connecting the thread of life with the fecundated zoosperm. They are the agents' secrets that help all women that are giving birth. Looking at the mystery Samael Aun Weor 26, 2 then, in accordance with what you explained to us, does predestination exist, and is one able to change it? Distinguishing lady, We are going to give an answer to such question. It is clear that predestination exists. Really, this is the result of all the good and bad actions of our past existences. If one steals, they will steal from you; if one kills, they will kill you, etc., etc., etc. For example, I am now going to narrate to you now a very interesting case. It happened that a youth and 3 companions friends left for a trip from Mexico toward the United States. But they had a tragic event. The car in which they traveled hit another, and there were counterblows with other vehicles that also circulated for the highway, with a balance of 2 dead and 2 wounded. When we investigated in the superior worlds, we found evidence to what is the law of the predestination. For one of the dead, the first of them, his death was instantaneous; he perished in the precise moment of the clash. Another suffered burns of 3rd degree and after 20 days exhaled his last breath. The third was the driver of the car, which had a dislocation of the arm and a small wound in the leg only. And another, the fourth, suffered just a light wound in the head. We investigated especially to the first 3, and the result was the following. The person who perished first had lived in Mexico during the time of Don Porfirio Diaz. It is clear that it had been a rich, powerful person, a great farmer tyrant, that enjoyed running over the hard-working poor, tossing the horses on the peasants in the roads, etc., etc. The person who died from serious burns had made the error of tossing gasoline on the bodies of his siblings when they slept at night and then set them on fire. That one had been his very serious crime in his past existence, and now perished in a car set on fire, and died with burns of 3rd degree. As for the third one, he had made a youth suffer in his past existence. It so happened that in a gang of boys they had hit him, and had dislocated an arm pulling it violently. Now he received the consequence during the accident. Therefore each one is born with their own destiny. The destiny could be modified doing many works of charity, being devoted to the good, practicing the works of mercy, that